So it's the weekend and I thought I would take you guys along with me on a Saturday where I'm going to prep a bunch of freezer meals. The weather is turning cooler and so I am back to my hot coffee in the mornings, and I thought I would just take you guys along with me. So I'm going to be sharing 5 freezer meals with you today. All of them are delicious. I'll have all of the recipes linked down below. Obviously, these meals are going to be super convenient for the busy back to school season. So I thought before we get started, I would share with you guys our new puppy. His name is Milo. We decided to get a new puppy because Murphy is getting older, and we got him from a local rescue about 4 weeks ago now. He is settling in very nicely, and I have shared some pictures of him on Instagram. Obviously, he's doing the typical puppy things, but he's a very good boy, and we are glad to have him in our home. First freezer meal we are going to put together is a Cuban pork roast. This is a really delicious recipe, and what you'll need for this is a pork butt roast, some garlic. You'll also need 1 large onion and some oranges. You're going to need the zest and the juice of those. I wish I would have had full-size oranges, but I had to do with mandarins. Some ground cumin, some dried oregano, and then also some diced chipotle peppers. You can get those in a jar in the Hispanic food aisle. And then I've also got one of my bag holders here that I use for freezer meals. I will link these down below. They are super convenient in terms of putting together freezer meals. It's one of those things that I wasn't quite sure if I needed, but once I got them, I knew that they were here to stay. So I put my pork butt roast into the freezer bag, and then I'm going to season it with some salt. This is a recipe that can be either made in the Instant Pot or in the Crockpot. Once you basically put the pork with all of the seasonings and marinade together in the freezer bag, then you freeze that, and then you can either cook it from frozen or you can thaw it out and cook it that way too. So first I'm going to cut my onion up into large chunks. Since this is going either in the slow cooker or the Instant Pot, you don't have to worry about cutting the onion up into super small pieces. It doesn't really matter because it will mostly just disintegrate as you either slow cook it or pressure cook it. So I'm going to go ahead and get those onions into the bag. Next, I'm going to put in my dry seasonings. So I'm putting in some dried oregano and some cumin. I already added the salt, and then I will also add some black pepper as well into the bag. Next up, you need some garlic. I'm going to use about 6 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to put them through my garlic crusher. If you have already crushed garlic, you can use that as well. And then about 1.5 teaspoons of the chipotles in adobo sauce. You can use more or less depending on your heat tolerance, but this does give it a really nice flavor. I'm going to pour in about 1 cup of water. This is really important, especially if you're cooking it in the Instant Pot, because you do need 1 cup of water in there for the food to come to pressure. Next, I'm going to zest my oranges and add that to the bag with all of the other ingredients. And then the recipe calls for, I think, about 1/2 cup of orange juice. I probably didn't quite have 1/2 cup. I wish I would have just bought some orange juice at the store and used that. So instead, I found these cuties in the fridge and went ahead and juiced them. It still turned out delicious. So whatever you have on hand, it will probably work. But the combination of the orange with the spiciness and all of the other herbs and spices in there is really what gives this a great flavor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and seal this bag up. And this is the point where you could throw this into the freezer for later use. If you're going to make it within the next couple days, you could also just put it in the refrigerator and keep it like that. But I'm also going to show you guys how these meals look like cooked, because I think that's important for you guys to know whether you want to make them or not. So I tried to squeeze out as most of the air as I could, and I'll pop this in the freezer. So when you want to cook this, I'm going to go ahead and cook it in the Instant Pot. So I just have my Instant Pot here. I put the pork roast into the insert with all of the marinade and onions, and then I cook this on high pressure for 60 minutes, and then I let it do a natural pressure release for about 20 minutes. And when it's done, you can see that it shreds really easily. I went ahead and skimmed off a lot of the fat because I'm going to use the sauce to drizzle this over the pork. So how I serve this is with some brown rice, and I took some of the sauce and drizzled it over the top and then sprinkled it with a little bit of cilantro. You could also make tacos with this particular recipe. You could really serve this with anything, but the flavor is really delicious. And if you have a pork roast to use up, highly recommend trying this. It was really delicious. So besides freezer meals, one of the things that really helps me stay on top of my dinner game is utilizing Green Chef. As a super busy mom, they come in clutch, and the best part is that they deliver everything right to your door. You don't have to worry about grocery shopping or meal planning. And thank you to Green Chef for sponsoring today's video. If you guys aren't familiar with Green Chef, they are a CCOF certified organic meal kit company that helps you cook clean, delicious dinners week after week with step-by-step recipes and pre-measured premium ingredients that save you time. They are changing the meal kit subscription game with options for every lifestyle, including keto and paleo, vegan, vegetarian, fast and fit, Mediterranean, and gluten-free. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you guys these apricot glazed pork meatballs. This was a delicious dish that I got in my Green Chef box this week. One of my favorite things about using Green Chef is that they make cooking easy, so you can spend less time stressing and more time enjoying delicious home-cooked meals. They also have pre-made and pre-measured sauces, dressings, and spices, and there are often flavor combinations that I probably wouldn't think of myself. They also save you time by taking care of the meal planning, grocery shopping, and most of the prep for you. So like I said, it's super easy, and not having that mental energy of trying to figure out what's for dinner is super, super helpful. I also love that they have so many options on their website to choose from in terms of meals, so you can always find something that fits your family's tastes. So for this particular meal, it came together in about 30 minutes, which I think is fantastic. I went ahead and got the water on to boil for the couscous, and then I'm going to start prepping my kale for the salad. So I'm just pulling the leaves off of the stems and putting those into my salad spinner, and I'll just soak this in really cold water along with the radishes to give them a wash before I assemble that part. I'm going to go ahead and assemble the meatballs. So I have the ground pork here. I'm going to go ahead and get that into the bowl, and then these are super simple to put together. So basically, to the pork, you're just going to add the pre-chopped onion and ginger, which saves a ton of time, and then the spice seasoning mix, and then just mix it together. I like to mix my meatballs together with a fork. I find that it keeps the mixture really light and airy, and it also doesn't dirty up your fingers. A fork does the perfect job of mixing everything together. So I'm just going to shape the pork mixture into meatballs and put them into a nonstick skillet that I have drizzled with a little bit of avocado oil, and then I'll put that on the stove just over about medium heat and saute those until they are almost cooked through. Meatballs are cooking. I'm going to go ahead and chop my veggies for the salad. So for the kale, I am just chopping that up and getting that into a bowl. We're going to mix this with the dressing, and then this also included some radishes, which are really delicious. And like I said, I would never think to put this combination together. I really feel too like if you are looking to eat more veggies, Green Chef can be a great option for you, because sometimes I feel like I just run out of ideas to creatively eat vegetables, and it's one of those services where like you don't have to think about it. The flavor combinations are really great, and it can really help you increase your veggie intake. The carrots came pre-shredded, so I'm going to go ahead and toss those into the bowl, and then I'm going to add the yogurt vinaigrette that came with this, season it with a little bit of salt, and just toss that around. The great thing about kale salad too is that it does hold up pretty well in the refrigerator, even if you dress it ahead of time, because the kale is so hearty. So at this point, you just want to set this aside until the rest of dinner is done. Obviously taste it for seasonings and add salt and pepper as you would like. So you can see that my Israeli couscous is done cooking. I'm going to turn that off and just let it rest. And then for my meatballs, I'm just going to go ahead and give those a flip. You do want to cook these over about medium heat just to make sure that they do cook all the way through before they, brown too much on the outside. Meatballs are almost done. I'm going to go ahead and add the sauce. This is a spicy apricot glaze, which is delicious. And then I'll just let that simmer until everything comes together. So here is our completed plate. So good and so easy to put together. If you guys want to try out Green Chef, I highly recommend them. I've been working with them for a long time here on my channel, and I have also personally used them for a long time. So if you guys want to check them out, I've got an awesome discount code. You can use my code JenChapin135 to get $135 off across 5 boxes. Plus, you'll get free shipping on your first box. You can go to greenchef.com for more details. I'll have the link in the description box below. Once again, the code is JenChapin135 to get $135 $135 off across 5 boxes, plus free shipping on your first box. You can go to greenchef.com for more details. Okay, so we are going to put together some freezer Baja fish tacos. So I've got some mahi fillets. I've also got some seasonings, some cumin, seasoned salt, and chili powder. I've also got some avocado oil and a couple of limes. So for this dish, what you want to do is go ahead and prepare a gallon freezer bag and then add your fish to it. This recipe originally calls for mahi, but you can also use tilapia. It just depends on what you have available to you in your area. I'm going to take my oil and put it into a small bowl, and then I'm going to squeeze the juice of 2 limes into the oil. And this is what we're going to use for the marinade for the fish, and that is what is going to go in the freezer. Alternatively, if you wanted to make this meal right away, you could just add this marinade to the fish and leave it in the refrigerator for like 12 to 24 hours and it would work just fine. So I'm going to whisk together my oil and my lime juice. I'm going to add some chili powder, some cumin, and some seasoned salt, and I'll go ahead and whisk that together. And all you have to do is pour this over the fish. That is it. Super duper easy. Go ahead and seal it up and stick that either in the freezer or the refrigerator. Now, when it's time to make your fish tacos, you want to go ahead and put together the sauce. So I have a cup of sour cream and I'm adding that to my bowl. Next, I'm going to add a spoonful of mayo and the juice of 1 lime. This sauce is really delicious, so don't skip it. It really does kind of make the recipe and really kind of brings out the flavor of the lime in the fish. So I'm whisking that together. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of sriracha, some cumin, some paprika, as well as some garlic powder and some dried cilantro. If you are averse to cilantro, you can go ahead and leave that out. Next, I'm going to whisk that together and go ahead and taste it, see if it needs any extra salt and pepper. Once it is seasoned to your liking, go ahead and put it into a container, and then you can stick that in the fridge while you are making your tacos. Okay, so I've got my Instant Pot here. I poured 1 cup of cold water into the bottom of the Instant Pot, and I added the trivet. Most Instant Pots come with this, or you can purchase one separately. Next, I'm going to add the marinated fish. It's okay if you stack it up, and then I'm going to put the lid on, and you just cook this on high or manual pressure for 5 minutes, and that's it. It is super, super quick. Once the fish is done, you can go ahead and take it out, add it to a dish, cover it with foil, and let it rest while you assemble the rest of the ingredients for the tacos. So I went ahead and got some corn tortillas. You could use flour if you wanted to, and I charred these on my gas grill, or you can heat them up in a skillet. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of fish to each one. I also have some avocado salsa verde guacamole type sauce that I'm adding to these. You could also just use plain avocado if you wanted to. I have some shredded cabbage. I'm going to add a little bit of that to each of the tacos. That actually adds a really nice crunch. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that sauce that we made. Really delicious. Highly recommend this for any tacos that you have. Really, it doesn't have to be just fish tacos. And then I also minced up some cilantro, and I'm going to add that as well. You can really top these with anything that you like, but highly encourage you to try this recipe. It's really delicious, and it is definitely family friendly. The fish is very mild, and like I said, it's very versatile. Definitely a winner in my book. Okay, so next up we've got a Spanish beef stew recipe. I've got about 3.5 pounds of beef stew meat. I also have some roasted red peppers, some sweet paprika. I've got 1 onion. We're gonna need a lot of garlic for this recipe, a few Roma tomatoes, some prosciutto, and some freshly minced rosemary. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep my freezer bag. I'm just, again, putting a Ziploc bag into my bag holder. These are super convenient, easy to use. And I've got my stew meat here. This looks like a lot, but really the beef cooks down quite a bit. So this does make about 6 servings. I season the beef with salt and pepper, and then I'm going to go ahead and add that to my freezer bag, and I'll prep the rest of the ingredients. So I'm dicing up my Roma tomatoes and adding those to the bag. These just add a little bit of sweetness to the sauce, and they do definitely cook down. So even if you're not a fan of tomatoes, you won't even be able to tell really that they're in there. I'm also going to slice up my onion in pretty big chunks and add that. These will cook down pretty well in the Instant Pot. And then I'm also going to mince 10 cloves of garlic and add that to the bag as well. I also have some roasted red peppers. I'm going to chop up about half a cup of those. You could also get pre-chopped roasted red peppers. Those would work well. And then we need about 4 ounces of prosciutto. This can sometimes be difficult to find depending on where you live. I live in the Midwest, and sometimes it's difficult for me to find specialty ingredients, but even I was able to find this at Walmart, so hopefully you can too. It gives the stew a really nice smoky flavor without being too overpowering. So I just diced that up, put it in the bag, and next I'm going to dice up some rosemary and add that to the freezer bag as well. Next, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of paprika, and that's basically it. At this point, you can seal this up, and I mix it up just a little bit, to kind of try and get everything incorporated, and put that in the freezer until you are ready to make it. When you're ready to make this dish, go ahead and preheat your Instant Pot to the saute function. Thaw out the beef mixture and add it straight to the Instant Pot. I'm going to saute this for probably about 5 to 10 minutes, just until I get a little bit of color on the beef. Alternatively, this is also when you could just put all of these ingredients in a slow cooker and cook it on low for 8 hours. I was making this in the afternoon, so I didn't have time to do that. But basically, you'll go ahead and put the lid on this and cook it on high pressure for 35 minutes. It turns out so delicious. You don't even have to put any liquid in there. It makes its own liquid. Go ahead and check out the recipe because there are a few extra steps to season and thicken the sauce. But I cooked up some egg noodles and served it with that. Really delicious. You could also serve this with rice or even mashed potatoes if you wanted to. Okay, so our next recipe is the lemon basil chicken. This is so easy and requires very minimal ingredients. I've got some chicken breasts here, 2 lemons, a container of basil pesto, and some mozzarella cheese. And then for this recipe, you'll also need a freezer pan since that is what we're going to be baking it in. I just figured it would be easier to assemble it and be able to bake it right in the freezer pan. So I'm going to go ahead and juice my lemons into a measuring cup. I would say if you're not a huge fan of lemon flavor, you can definitely cut down on the lemon in this recipe. I love lemon flavor, so I'm totally cool with it. I'm going to add that to a bowl, and then I'm going to measure out my pesto and add that as well and just whisk that together. And that's basically it for the sauce for this recipe. Super, super simple. Just whisk that together until it is all combined. Next, I'm going to put my chicken breast into my freezer pan. You can really do as many chicken breasts as you like. The recipe calls for 6 because this is for 6 servings. But if you wanted to double this and make 2 batches, you could totally do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the pesto mixture over the chicken, and then you just kind of want to turn that over to make sure that all of the chicken is coated. And I also tried to make sure that most of the pesto was on top of the chicken, just because I wanted it to kind of be submerged. I didn't want it to dry out in the oven. So at this point, once you get your chicken breast coated with the pesto mixture, you can put some foil on this, and this is when you would go ahead and pop it in your freezer if you wanted to do a freezer meal, or you could also pop it in the refrigerator if you were going to make it within the next couple days. So when it's time to bake this, all you have to do is bake it covered with foil for about 30 minutes. Remove the foil, add your mozzarella cheese, and then I usually just pop it back under the broiler for about 5 minutes. You can see that it retains that really green color, which is kind of awesome. And the flavors are really good on this one. I served this with some fettuccine pasta mixed with a little bit of Alfredo sauce. Turned out really, really good. You could also just have this without pasta and have some garlic bread on the side or potatoes. Either way, it's delicious. Okay, so the next freezer meal we're gonna put together is some Italian beef. So I have a large chuck roast here that I got from Aldi, some fresh rosemary, some pepperoncinis. You'll need 1 jar of that, and some salt and pepper. You'll also need an onion, which I forgot to get out at first, but don't worry, I will add it. This recipe has very minimal ingredients, but it is really delicious. There are different versions of this floating out on the internet. There's one version where you put in a stick of butter and you use like Italian seasoning mix. I can't do the idea of putting a stick of butter in with my roast when it's so fatty to begin with, but I know a lot of people do that and it's delicious. I really like this version with the fresh rosemary. I think that the flavors are perfect. So I'm just going to take most of the leaves off of that and then chop these finely. I believe you need about 2 tablespoons of this, and I'll put this into the freezer bag along with the chuck roast. Next, I'm going to add some freshly cracked black pepper. I'm also going to add some salt. Don't be shy with the salt because this is a rather large cut of meat. And then I'm going to dump in the jar of pepperoncinis along with the juice. This helps give it a really, really great flavor. I'm going to go ahead and seal the bag up and mix it around. And this is the point where you would put this in the freezer or the fridge if you were going to cook it, within the next couple of days. But these freezer meal packs are so convenient just to have hanging around in the freezer, especially dishes like this, because you can put them straight from the freezer into the crock pot and they cook all day and your dinner is done. I told you guys I forgot to show you the onion. I got everything into the bag and then I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. So I'm going to go ahead and chop this onion into large pieces and add that to the bag as well. Okay, so to cook this, you just want to put your roast into a crock pot, or you could do this in an instant pot as well. And then I added about 2 cups of beef broth and I put the lid on that. You can cook this all day on low for 8 to 10 hours, or you can cook it on high for about 6 to 7 hours. But you can see that when it's done, the meat shreds up really, really nicely. And I go ahead and put it back into the pot with some of the broth. And then this is how I serve these. I toast up some rolls, I add some cheese to them, and I forgot to get a video of the finished product, but I do have a photo. So here is that photo of these Italian beef sandwiches. Like I said, super delicious and definitely a really great freezer meal to have on hand. So the next freezer meal we are going to put together is some Thai coconut chicken. This one turned out really, really good and it was my first time making it, so I'm excited to share it with you. I've got some chicken breasts. You could also use chicken thighs. I've got 1 can of coconut milk, some limes. Make sure that you use full fat coconut milk. I've also got some garlic chili paste. If you can't find that, sometimes it is hard to find, I would just use sriracha. I've also got some brown sugar, some vegetable oil, or you could use olive oil, and then I've got my spices. So for this, you will need some ground coriander, cumin, turmeric, and just a little bit of cinnamon. I've also got a bunch of garlic. You'll need some of that, some ginger, some cilantro, and some salt. So this recipe, you could actually cook it a bunch of different ways, but I ended up grilling these chicken breasts and they were super, super good. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with my freezer bag and get that into my bag holder. I think I mentioned this, but I'll link these bag holders down below. And I actually have a whole section of my Amazon store set up for freezer meal cooking. So I'll link that down below as well if you guys want to check out everything I use. So I went ahead and put my chicken breasts into the bag, and then I'm going to mix up my marinade for these in a separate bowl just to make sure that I get everything combined together before I add it to the chicken. So I'm adding some coconut milk to my bowl. To the coconut milk, I'm going to go ahead and add the juice of 2 limes, and then I'm going to add the brown sugar, some vegetable oil, and then all of the spices and the garlic. This recipe kind of reminds me of making a curry, like a red curry, even though it doesn't have curry paste in it. It kind of has a lot of the same ingredients. I actually let this chicken marinate for about 2 days before I threw it on the grill, and it was delightful. The chicken was super tender and flavorful, but you know, the idea behind this too is that you can obviously put this together as a chicken marinade in the bag and then throw it in the freezer. It'll kind of do the same thing. You know, go ahead and thaw it out, and then you can cook it in a variety of different ways. Like I said, I grilled this, but I think you could bake the chicken or you could saute it as well. So the last ingredient for our marinade is some freshly chopped cilantro. If you like cilantro, don't leave that out because it does give it a great flavor. And then we're also going to add our chili garlic paste. Like I said, if you can't find that, go ahead and use sriracha. And then I'm going to whisk this all together until everything is well combined. Okay, so I've got my chicken in the bag here, and I'm going to go ahead and pour that marinade over top and basically just squeeze all of the air that I can out of the bag and mix it all together. Like I said, this is the point where you can put this either in the refrigerator or the freezer, and feel free to use chicken thighs if you prefer those. I also haven't tried this yet, but I think this would be a really great marinade for salmon as well. So when I was ready to cook this, I just went ahead and preheated my gas grill to about medium-high heat, turned it down to medium, and then put the chicken breasts on there. I'm going to serve this with some rice, but I also think that this would be delicious cut up and put over a salad as well. It's just a great way to meal prep chicken for the week, especially if you want to, you know, cut it up and put it on things for your lunches. Okay, so after the chicken came off the grill, I am just letting it rest covered in a pan, and then while that finishes resting, I just boiled some brown rice. This is boil in a bag brown rice, super convenient and easy to use, especially if you have issues cooking rice. And then you're going to see how juicy and tender this chicken is. It turned out so good. So I'm just slicing this up, and like I said, I'm going to serve it with some rice. I ate this for lunch several days this week as leftovers when I made this, and it was really great. I did go ahead and put some spicy mayo over the top, which is not pictured here, but also added some freshly chopped cilantro, and I have plans to do this again for a salad as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed all of these freezer meals. Don't forget to check out Green Chef. They are also super convenient for busy nights. I have that discount code and the link in the description box below, and I will link all of these recipes down below as well. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.